Tonight, lights, camera, tariffs. The president is extending his trade war to movies, vowing to slap a 100% tariffs on films produced outside of the United States. The details, like many of his recent economic moves, are unclear. But if you're wondering where he got this idea, a source tells CNN the president met with actor and vocal supporter Jon Voight over the weekend. Then Trump made the announcement, sending shockwaves across the industry. You may also remember Trump named Voight as one of his special ambassadors to Hollywood, along with Stallone and Mel Gibson. But I personally am curious what Gibson thinks of this idea, since his film, The Passion of the Christ, the sequel, begins filming this summer in Italy. Jason Carter joins us in our fifth seat at the table. He is a former Georgia state senator and President Jimmy Carter's grandson. This is not so much about Hollywood because, whatever, they'll figure it out. But it's a question about Trump's decision making. And it's this, another conversation with Nick Saban produced an executive order on college athlete payments. The last person to whisper in his ear gets apparently an executive order.
Yeah, I mean, he talked to a waitress and came with no tax on tips, right? I mean, there's a lot of questions, but the biggest problem that I have with it, and we've been talking about it this whole time, is it's about why is one person making all of these decisions right now, right? The president under both parties has probably gotten to be too strong. Where is Congress? Why is Congress? We haven't talked about Congress in a month, it seems like, on any program, because we're trying to figure out. Yeah, right, months, right? And so the question then is, why is it that it's all about the president? It leads to bad policy. It's a big problem. It's got constitutional problems for both parties. And the question is he going to be able to deliver? And it looks like the answer is no.
And the thing is, it is a real problem in terms of Hollywood having to shoot movies elsewhere to try to keep costs down. So he was actually, I can't believe I'm saying that. He was actually right about this.
I didn't know you would come down on that.
Yeah, I know. He was actually right about that. The thing is, he presented a bad solution. And, they're not necessarily stealing jobs. They found it easier to take Americans, crew and personnel here over to other countries to fix this. And what's also not clear is if Jon Voight, he didn't propose this as a solution. I think it appears, based off the reports, that I think they were thinking more along the lines of, different states or maybe even a national federal film tax credit, which works really well, right? That's a good solution.
Right, including Georgia, by the way.
And fortunately, if you look at the late reporting today, the White House has said that the president is looking at having meetings with Hollywood executives, that they're studying the idea, and he said, quote, I don't want to hurt the industry, I want to help the industry.
So it sounds like there's more.
You
put that out on Truth Social.
It's like a backwards process. He announces the policy and then says, oh, actually, we're going to go back and maybe look at it later.
Well, do you want him to have meetings or not?
I want him to have the meetings before he actually says something. That actually matters.
I think we have to think about how he is dominating the kind of information attention economies. And if you look at the number of tweets he put out in the first 100 days of his last term, he has put out 3 times as many Truth Social posts. He has outpaced any president in a number of executive orders, and he's golfing every weekend. So that means that what he's doing is just simply overwhelming people. It's like a spaghetti windmill, throwing everything at the wall, see what sticks, and we talk about it. He follows up with that thing. But if you have 1,500 Truth Social tweets, he's not following every one of them because it doesn't get everybody talking. And I think that is a problem for us because people can't organize either resistance or even conversation around what he's doing because they're so completely overwhelmed by the fact that he's pumping out so much stuff.
Well, he's also, I think that his strategy of overwhelming people is right. I think we also have to think about what happens on the weekends at the White House because that's the Wild West for Trump and his social media use. But he also seems to think, Batya, that tariffs are the answer to everything. And I know that you agree with him on that, actually. But he keeps going after the dolls, okay? Here's what he said to NBC about this issue of whether or not girls are going to be able to have the dolls that they want for the holidays.
I'm just saying they don't need to have 30 dolls. They can have 3. They don't need to have 250 pencils. They can have 5.
All I'm saying is that a young lady, a 10-year-old girl, 9-year-old girl, a 15-year-old girl doesn't need 37 dolls. She could be very happy with 2 or 3 or 4 or 5.
I don't get it. It's like, stop, just put the shovel down at a certain point. I mean, this doesn't seem to be the best argument.
It's like 4 or 5 pencils.
You know what this is kind of making me think a lot about is the fact that every rich person I know, their daughter has 2 or 3 dolls, maybe a couple American Girl dolls, 2 or 3 expensive, nice dolls, and no crap from China. But if you go into a broke person's house, that floor is littered with broken toys from the dollar store.
So now we're shaming people for bringing
Barbie shaming.
Is the opportunity to make enough money to make the same decisions that every rich person is already making and keeping the cheap toys away from their kids. And the people braying the loudest about this are the people who would never let their kids buy those crappy toys. And it is so offensive to me because when you talk to working class people, they sound just like the president. They would love to be buying high quality stuff for their kids instead of 1,000 cheap things that are going to break immediately because that's what they can afford.
That's the worst defense of Donald Trump because China makes 80% of all toys sold in this country and 90% of all Christmas goods sold in this country. We have a lot of leverage with China. The Christmas and the doll industry is not one of them. When you start rationing dolls for American people, you're losing the argument. It's giving Scrooge vibes.
Is it a good thing that we're so dependent on China for anything?
It's not a good thing or bad.
But you're passionately arguing for it.
What I'm saying is that he's losing the argument because this idea of like, oh, we can buy American Girl dolls and all of us will be just so happy. Well, 80% of all toys,
Can I offer another look at this, Batya? Hold on a second. Let's think about this like for real. Like people who really don't have a lot of money, here's what they're really thinking. They're not thinking, I want to buy the most expensive doll for my child. They're thinking, I want to buy a doll for my child so that I can also afford food. I can also afford clothes. I can also afford to send them to school. So the idea that the whole thing is about buying more and more expensive goods, that seems to completely miss the point about what's happening in terms of people who are actually struggling in this country.
The point is that the reason they can only afford toys from China is because we cannot afford to consume the product of the American worker because of the offshoring of manufacturing. If they were making the toys, they would be able to afford them. This was Fordism. This was the Democrats' idea for 100 years.
Okay, sorry, but like, isn't there a values judgment here that says it is more important to manufacture chips, computer chips here, than it is to manufacture dolls? And that it's okay for China to manufacture dolls because we don't really need that doll industry so much.
Why?
And
what's wrong with
because it's fine.
Why is it okay to cede anything to China? They're the enemy.
Also, Abby,
you're here. Let's go China this or that. Why do I have to cede anything to the enemy?
First in line for the shoe factory over here, and then first in line for the doll factory over here.
Both ways. On the one hand, you're saying that they have to have access to 30 cheap dolls. On the other hand, you're saying, why do we need to make dolls? We need to make what Americans consume. It's not important to have one factory over another. It's important for working class people to have access to the American dream.
Jay said, are you ready to get in?
My only point is this. We are talking about dolls. The president is talking about dolls. Like, I live in Georgia. What people are talking about there, it's not dolls. They don't want to see the president worrying about dolls. They do, yes, want to see him bring prices down on the staples of their lives, right? Let's look at inflation. Let's look at the way that people's 401ks are getting destroyed. Let's look at this variety of other things out there.
You got to say we live in Georgia.
We live. I mean, look, but my only point is this, like how we ended up with the president of the United States spending all this time on dolls, it just blows my mind. Like, I think he's going to have to start delivering on the promises that he's made. And so far, it's all distraction. Let's talk about Barbie. Let's talk about Alcatraz. Let's talk about Hollywood.
He attracted $1.5 trillion in manufacturing to this country in the last 100 days. How can you not acknowledge that as a win?
So then maybe he should stop telling people that their stuff is about to get more expensive. It clearly, the money whatever he's brought in investments is not addressing the affordability issue that he acknowledges is there.
Well, it
So
might if they produce high-paying jobs for the American people.
All right, we'll see. We will see if that happens and if those investments actually materialize. Coming up next for us, Forget Gitmo, Donald Trump now wants to reopen Alcatraz to send America's most ruthless prisoners there. We're going to debate the merits of that.